Yo, Poornima. Yo.
Oh, what's up?
Yeah,
What's up?
What are you doing?
Oh, I'm just listening to some rap before we shoot.
You listen to rap?
Yeah.
You listen to rap?
Yeah.
I listen to rap.
You listen to rap?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
I like to rap too.
You like to rap?
I like
That's
to rap.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like to rap?
Yeah, I don't know how to rap. Did you know he knows how to rap?
Yeah, Eric can rap.
Yeah.
You can rap?
Yeah. Would you like to learn how to rap?
Yeah, I'd like to learn how to rap. What do I do?
So, stand up.
Okay.
You gotta,
All right.
you got to read a beat.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ryan, maybe you could
Want a beat?
give us some classic.
I'll give you one of my favorites.
This one I favorite.
Here we go.
And
All right. Oh, it's like when I do like.
no, yeah, don't do any of that. Definitely keep hands to yourself.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you can do something, just not that.
Okay.
Okay, now you just want to talk to the beat. You don't worry about all the complex stuff like rhymes or sense or story structure. Just start talking and you can't stop talking.
Okay.
And just talk about whatever you're feeling or
Okay.
thinking.
So
And just don't think about it. So what are we doing here?
we're here today
Yep.
filming Femgineer TV, the third episode, with Product Hunt, Eric and Ryan. We're going to talk about
What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about building a community, talk about engaging a community.
Yep.
We're going to talk about growing.
What about engaging the community?
We get them hooked on our product.
Yeah.
We got to keep them coming back. We got to pull them in.
Keep talking more about that. Just get more into it.
We
Just
gotta use
feel it.
We gotta use email. We have to use some non-product techniques.
Yeah.
Reaching out to people.
No, you're good. We're gonna use the email. We gotta break it down everything in detail. Because matter of fact, T-Berg is a growth hacker and a dope rapper, and it's critical, pivotal you use Tracker. Matter of fact, though, talk about Ryan Hoover. See, we're trying to build a community. You and me, everything together. Everybody's part of the community, so it's just unity. It's all love, and we do it so beautifully. Everything we do with frequency. When we freak MCs, they can't speak to me decently when I take it though. I see this is much better than everything you hear on the radio. It's all love. Everything we do is really off the cuff. Product Hunt, it's all about love.
Nice. Welcome to the third episode of Femgineer TV, brought to you by Pivotal Tracker. I'm your host, Poornima Vijayashanker, the founder of Femgineer. Femgineer is an education company where we teach innovators how to build software products so they can find more freedom in their careers, enrich other people's lives, and make the tech community more inclusive and flexible. Over the years, there have been a number of tools and techniques that tout people can bring you customers to your software products. But the number one technique that is timeless is word of mouth marketing. The reason that word of mouth marketing is so powerful is that it's an authentic sales pitch. Basically, one customer gives another customer a testimonial. These days, most customer testimonials live online. They are done either through online communities and blogs, or through social media, or even people just forwarding emails to each other. Of course, if you're wondering how you can accelerate word of mouth for your product, we're going to be tackling that topic in today's episode. Today's episode, we're going to explore some techniques for how to build an online community and really get them to evangelize your software product. And to help us out, I've invited both Ryan Hoover and Eric Torenberg from Product Hunt. Before founding Product Hunt, Ryan Hoover was the director of product at Playhaven. He's also the creator of Startup Edition, a curated gathering of bloggers in the startup community, and an entrepreneur in residence at Tradecraft. Eric Torenberg was an associate at Queensbridge, a venture capital firm, and founded Wrapped FM, a bi-directional video platform for rap battles, ciphers, and performances. Now, over the past 2 years, these guys have built Product Hunt as a platform to help makers build awareness for their products. So if you're a product maker today, you can actually go online and submit your product, and the community will vote it up. In order to build the platform, they of course had to engage a community of strong product hunters. So today we're going to talk about how they've built this community from scratch. Thanks you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So Ryan, I know we met when you reached out to me about Startup Edition, and Eric, we met back when I had given the keynote at MHAX. So it's great to see that you guys have built Product Hunt over these past couple of years. Before we get into how you did that, let's just start by talking about what lured you into startup land and what inspired you to start Product Hunt. So why don't we start with you, Ryan?
Sure. So, yeah, I was working at Playhaven for a while, actually. I was there for 3.5 years before I ended up leaving. And to make a long story short, I ended up, learning a lot and having a lot of good relationships through that 3.5-year experience. But I realized that I wanted to try something different and work on a consumer product, build something for myself ultimately. And so I decided that it was best to move on and do something different, but I didn't know what to do exactly. So during that time period of kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, I was talking to a couple startups. I realized that there's this opportunity to create some sort of online community, but a place to discover new technology products. And Product Hunt just began then as a simple email list to start.
Nice. And you had been doing like a lot of projects on the side, like you did Startup Edition, you worked on Hooked with Near.
That's right. Yeah, I actually met Near in 2012, and I'd been following his blog for so long. He writes about habit formation and how to take psychology and apply it to a product, a technology product, which I thought was fascinating. And we ended up meeting, and I helped him write his book Hooked, which has done really well. He did 95% of the work, but I learned a lot through him in helping him create that book.
Yeah, I really liked that book Hooked too, because it talks about how you compel users to come back and pull them back into your product. We'll get into more of that later. Let's talk about you, Eric. What were you doing? I know you were working on your own startup, Wrapped FM. What got you interested in Product Hunt?
Yeah, so like Ryan, I also want to work on things I'm really passionate about and things that I'm a user of. And I started Wrapped because I wanted to learn how to rap and meet other people. And what I'm passionate about is online communities. And befriended Ryan kind of through the startup scene and his writings, and saw what he was doing Product Hunt just as a friend, and thought it was really cool, and was just volunteering and wanted to help out. And I saw that it was really picking up, and also I saw that he needed some help. That the scale just became so big. So I joined him.
Awesome.
I thought this is an awesome community I want to be a part of.
Great. So when you're building a user-generated content site like Product Hunt, there's that classic problem of getting users to come in and actually use the product before there's any content. And the same problem happens even for SaaS products, right? The difference is one's content, one's data. And you've got to try to compel users to come and visit your product and try it out. I know when I was at Mint, the way that we discovered what would be compelling first-time experience for users was that we noticed that once people had added one account, whether it was credit account or their bank account, it didn't matter. But as long as they added one, then they understood the value of the product and they were pretty much hooked at that point. And so we really had to constrain that first-time user experience to make sure that they saw the value. How did you guys think about your first-time experience for people that were using Product Hunt?
Yeah, well, Product Hunt had an interesting start in that it was, again, a side project and experiment in the very beginning, and the early users were people that I knew primarily, and these were a lot of either investors or reporters or entrepreneurs, founders, and that's our core focus, especially in the beginning. And so for me, it was actually Product Hunt, sort of its inception and its beginning was actually like a year and a half before Product Hunt began. And what I mean by that is I built these relationships over time with people in this area, in this startup scene, and those people then would have some level of respect for what I had to say or what I had to build, and I could reach out to them immediately. So by starting with a seed group of relatively influential people, we could then spread the word from there. And it was really just building those authentic relationships and then taking their feedback over time as we started forming the product.
And a lot of it evolved from kind of organic behaviors that Ryan was already sharing products and talking with other people about products.
Got it.
So it was kind of a logical next step of what already was happening.
Yeah. So is that first time experience now for users, like they come in and they start sharing products that they like, or what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed over time as the community's grown, and it's not just my friends. I don't know the names of everyone on the product, and of course. But it's changed, and there's different dynamics. There's different types of people. They come in, with their friends. Their friends launch a product, and they're seeing it through Twitter or some other means. And so they experience, and their first touch of Product Hunt is, oh, their friend's product is on there.
Cool.
For other people, it's the makers. Their product is posted, and what a great delight is that to come to a site and say, oh, all these people are talking about my product and giving me feedback, and I'm getting traffic out of that. It's a great first-time user experience for those people.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. So let's go back. You said, you had these influencers, like investors, press. When you were initially talking to them about the concept, and maybe you didn't have it fully fleshed out yet, but maybe you're just talking to them, did they understand the value of it immediately, or do you kind of have to nudge them along?
That's a good question. They immediately were interested, but they were, of course, skeptical. It's like, do we really need a place to discover new products? We already do this on Twitter. We talk in person. We read it in the tech press. And actually, a lot of people said, I don't think there are enough products every day created.
Oh, interesting.
Now we get a few hundred every day.
Now I'm like, oh, we have too many.
Yeah, way too many.
And clearly there's an opportunity that we validated. And I didn't go through and do user research by any means. This was just things that I've observed through my own experiences. And then by creating the email list, which took 20, 30 minutes to set up, that was the MVP ultimately. It wasn't that we spent all this time building the product to begin with.
Yeah.
But you spent the couple of years building relationships.
Exactly.
And bringing on people who had those. Yeah.
Nice. So people really get excited, when they have some users using their products, but you got to keep them coming back, right? Engagement is what gets people to know that your product is top of mind for them, and that's what they actually then start talking about, right? That's how you compel them to start talking about it. I'm going to reference Nir's book, Hook, again. I think we should get him on the show. But Nir talks about pulling people back in and using a medium that's really sticky. So for example, he talks a lot about email because people are really committed to their inboxes, right? They want people to basically come back and people are gonna try to get that inbox zero. Did you guys, I know you mentioned email, how did you use email initially to pull people back into the product?
Yeah. Well, it started off as email, so it's kind of been a core part of Product Hunt experience from the beginning. And that's exactly right. Email is something that everyone uses, whether you like it or not, you're going to use email.
Yeah.
And it's also a place that you're going to return to every time. So by using email, we can become a part of that channel and that feed and that daily behavior. And so it started off, with an email list, and we continue doing that. It's a big part of Product Hunt. 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, we send out the email, and it's intended to be on that time specifically for people that have built that habit over time. Have you noticed anything regarding the email or any other observations?
Well, the last few months we've also put in email notifications, and we talk a lot about what Medium does and how they provide such a delightful experience when you write a post and you keep getting that validation. And when you launch a product, it's your baby. And you want to know that people are really liking it. And so when people comment or when you get a certain amount of upvote, you'll get notifications on Twitter. We now have with those GIFs, like Oprah dancing. We really try to delight our users. So both on Twitter is huge for us, and then and we'll email them as well.
That's cool. Yeah. Nice. So what are some other channels that you use to pull people back into Product Hunt? I know you just mentioned Twitter. Are there any other products or channels that you found useful for getting people to come back?
Email is certainly one of them. Twitter is something that we're experimenting with, actually, and using that as a secondary channel in many ways to bring people back. And also the iOS app. We don't yet have push notifications in the iOS app because we're focusing on some other things, but that's also another way to re-engage people and bring them back. And I think one of the challenges or maybe missed opportunities I think a lot of people face is that they don't remind people to come back to your service.
Yeah.
And they almost worry that they're being too spammy.
Definitely.
And there's definitely a line that you shouldn't be too spammy, but honestly, if you're writing good content or creating compelling content, people want to be notified of that.
Totally.
You mentioned Medium. You wrote a post that got, I don't know how many recommendations, but like hundreds, and you got these notifications, like trophies, like saying, hey, congrats, like 50 people like you.
I still get them. Like every week, I'm like,
nice.
It's like popular this week. I'm like, still popular.
And it's the ego boost, and you like it, and it's like, how can you deliver more of that stuff?
That makes sense.
Instead of like email spamming you, it's emails telling you you're awesome. And
nice.
It doesn't the reminders that you're awesome.
I wrote a post probably last year, and today I got a notification saying 50 people viewed your post, and I was like, that's cool. Yeah. Nice, very nice.
But a couple things to add to that. One is so with the email, we're constantly reinforcing, and the way the site is built and its day part, that Product Hunt is a daily habit. And so every morning, you're going to get it 7:30 in the morning, and you're going to check Product Hunt. You're going to see the top 10 of yesterday. Now you're going to see what's happening today. Another thing we do is we ask, every day there are people who do great on Product Hunt and have great experiences, get a lot of traffic, and we ask them if they're interested, no pressure obviously, if they want to share about their launch experience. And we don't say, hey, promote Product Hunt.
Right.
It's not. But we say, hey, do you want to give advice to other people that are launching?
Yeah.
How do you make the most out of your launch, regardless of channel? And a lot of them, and we say congratulations, and a lot of them have written posts about it. We've had probably over 100
Nice.
people who've written,
Well over 100, yeah.
how to launch posts that have featured Product Hunt. And so that is kind of, when you look at the launch literature out there, it brings people back to Product Hunt.
Very nice, yeah. So once you get people hooked, which you've obviously done a good job of, both in terms of general and daily use, then it's the time to get them to evangelize the product, right? You want them to actually go out and talk about it with their friends and spread the word. And that's great if they're a maker, but if they're not, then it might be a little bit more of a challenge. Let's talk about some techniques that didn't work, and then we'll talk about the ones that did, because it's always nice for people to know, what were the failures that happened, right? So what are some things that you guys tried that just,
Everything's worked, Poornima.
Oh, awesome.
I was thinking the same thing.
Well, actually, no. There is one specific thing that I was convinced was going to lead to more sharing and be a valuable tool. So right now there are a lot of mobile apps on Product Hunt, and we're really primarily most of our engagements on the desktop, on the web. So if you see a mobile app that you want on your phone and you're on a desktop, it's kind of awkward to then open up your phone and search for it in the App Store or get that app on your phone. So I was like, okay, why don't we do forward to SMS or forward to email or something like that? So we have a button on the site that you can click and you can enter your phone number or your email address and it'll forward an email with that link. And I was convinced that would be useful, and no one uses it.
Really? Wow.
No one uses it.
Yeah.
So thankfully it wasn't a huge feature. We didn't lose too much engineering time or anything, but sometimes you just don't really know until you try it.
Yeah, so it's good to experiment.
A couple others, not to enumerate all of our failures.
Sure.
And this isn't a failure.
Yeah.
We just implemented, we've spent small time doing a message button between journalists and founders. And we haven't seen a ton of direct messaging between journalists and founders yet. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes. Another thing, last thing, we put some time into creating collections based on geography.
Yeah.
So we thought that products in New York or products in Philadelphia or products in Berlin or products in China would do very well. But it turns out that the people only in those cities care about those things. And so there's some examples.
So there's no battles across cities yet. Okay.
Maybe we need to phrase it that way.
Yeah.
East versus west.
Maybe we should.
Yeah. Nice. So let's talk about what did work and why.
Yeah, so there's one thing I'll mention is that Product Hunt is inherently something that you want to share. At least the design of the product is surfacing new things, new technology, new products. And this is a behavior that's existed, at the water cooler when people are asking each other, have you seen Magic, or have you seen other apps that just launched? What's on your home screen? That kind of stuff. And so people have already been talking about this. And with our audience, who is very much like a startup, tech-centric community, they often want to introduce new products to new people. It's almost like, hey, have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Do they know about this? Let me introduce it. It's really fun. And so naturally people want to share things on Product Hunt or from Product Hunt. And so with that said, that behavior is there. It's really hard to change that behavior. If it's not something that's shareable, maybe a weird example is porn's not something you're probably going to share
Sure.
publicly. And there are other things that you don't necessarily lend themselves to word of mouth as much. That's the baseline that we have. Now there are ways to increase that and incentivize people to share or upvote or engage in other ways.
So that's great to have the inherent shareability. What about for folks like makers, right? A lot of times these folks are really busy, and while they'll promote their product, they might not promote the platform like Product Hunt. How did you guys go about getting them to spread the word to their other maker friends?
Yeah, a few things. So one is not only is it inherently viral, it's inherently like a competition every day, a friendly competition.
Yeah.
And the products that go to the top 5 get the most views, and they get significant views, as much or well bigger than some of the biggest tech publications. And we had other people tell that story, and we also had people tell the story that, hey, journalists and investors are looking at this. They're looking at the top 5. Their startups are getting funded directly off here, and it's in your hands. It's not in some other reporter's hands to tell you get to tell your story.
Right.
And so people have control. They have ownership. So.
Who was it? Cave on it yesterday. They launched Periscope, and he mentioned how refreshing it was to answer questions. He had, I think, 150, 160 questions, or at least comments, within a 12-hour period. And he was thoroughly reading through and answering them, and he found it refreshing because the community and the culture I think that we've fortunately been able to create is one of positivity, and but also one of honesty. And again, going back to the first introduction, of Product Hunt to many people. A lot of times it's makers and their product is on there, and how good is that experience, like having your product on there? That's building this empathy of, oh, I've been through this. I've launched a product. We launched a Chrome extension I was kind of nervous about earlier this week, and so they kind of understand what it's like to launch something, and that's why these comments and this Q&A that happens between makers and consumers is so vibrant.
Got it.
And a couple things to encourage evangelists. One, I think you want to have your internal team be evangelists.
Oh,
and
good
so
point.
Most of the people, especially in the beginning, including me, were evangelists of Product Hunt who were helping Ryan and then joined because they were just so valuable. Two, we empower our evangelists through community projects. So we have Josh, who runs a Daily Hunt, which is just a podcast of the top products on Product Hunt every day. We have Eric Willis, who runs Maker Hunt, which is essentially a Slack group of all the makers, and we really promote and encourage community. So empower evangelists to be seen as leaders.
Nice.
Then another thing is we have meetups. Offline meetups we've had them in over 50 different cities, all self-organized, because people want to be leaders in their cities, and they want their city to be represented on the map. So shout out to Darina from Toronto and a bunch of others. Philip, I think, just had like 300 people in Berlin. And so just make them feel, empower them, make them feel like what they are as rock stars, encouraging their communities and yeah.
Nice. So you just mentioned using meetup groups, but we've also talked about a number of ways that you've done product-based approaches.
Yeah.
What have you noticed is like the difference between having a technique that's purely product-based versus something that's more like reaching out to people or offline?
Yeah, I think you need a combination of both. In the very beginning, it was very, very manual. I was emailing people and I was looking and seeing who was signing up, and I was emailing them personally and welcoming them and adding something like very relevant to them, like talking about what their work was or something. And I would get replies to almost every single email, something that would be very delightful. They'd be like, whoa, I actually got an email after signing up for a site, and it's not automated, it's from the person that made the site. That's really cool. So it was extremely useful in the early days and kind of building that foundation. And then what we've done a lot of times is really manually done a lot of human interactions to MVP test things that we can productize in the future. Yeah. So one of the email you mentioned where we encourage people to write about their experience on Product Hunt, that used to be literally like manual emails that we type up every single day. And now we've automated and streamlined that to an extent so that it's still manual and it's still personal between us, but we've streamlined it so it's not as much work on our end to do, and we can do it at a bigger scale.
Got it.
Yeah. Any others coming on?
Well, I think you mentioned delighting users. It's just been a core philosophy since the beginning. Around the 1 year anniversary, we sent, I don't know, maybe 1,000 stickers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, we also sent a bunch of handwritten notes. Just trying to find ways to surprise and delight our community. I think Ryan would never say he's too modest, but I think he's the best product/community combination certainly I've ever seen, and one of the best in the Valley. And I think you need both. It needs to be inherently built in the product that the more they're incentivized to share and bring people in, and then they need to feel that they are connected to the brand. And Ryan and then me and then the rest of the team really just makes an effort, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on email, to really make, or in Product Hunt in the comments, make personal connections. And also a couple things, we don't allow any brands to comment on Product Hunt. Everything is people.
Yeah.
So anytime a brand tweets me, I'm like, I don't negotiate with brands.
Right.
I want to. There's a face behind every company, and that makes it more personal. That makes it, people can build friendships easier, and it brings a much more community feel.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, products are built by people for people, and we really want to humanize that. Right now, it's too much, almost like PR and marketing speak from a brand, and there needs to be more of that between the actual people, in my mind. And that's why the conversation is so, I believe, useful and interesting. Whereas if you had, let's take an extreme example, Pepsi, the brand, speaking within comments, it'd be weird.
Right.
Who am I talking to? Is this
a can
PR person?
Yeah.
I want to talk to the person that designed the can, that kind of stuff.
Nice. So our brains have been trained to value novelty and new things. How do you guys think about building the future of Product Hunt and continuing to build the fervor within your community for it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's consistent variability that we're always aware of, but then there's also just making progress in the product and making it fresh and changing things. And so the one thing I will mention, going back to email, is we have the daily email that goes Monday through Friday, and it has some consistent things, but also some variability to it. The consistent things are yesterday's top 10 products are always there, so you know that, oh, if I just want a quick digest of what was cool yesterday, I can go to the email. But also in the top header is typically a collection or something that's different every day. So what was today's? It was prank products. So
yeah, April Fools. Yeah, I saw
April
that.
Fools is coming up, so we did a collection of all these silly, ridiculous prank products. And earlier this week, we did some Meerkat apps, we did Instagram apps and products. And these are things that people can, every single morning, 7:30 a.m., open up that email and they don't know what they're going to get. It's sort of like a little gift. And it's important to have that variability. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit stale and rote, and you need to kind of surprise people.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's consistent variability is built into the product. You know what you're going to get. You're going to come to Product Hunt. You're going to see a list of the best products every day. But you go in a collection, and it could be what did we just have? Goat-related things.
My friend, she created this goat collection.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's in the extreme variability side.
Yeah.
You never know.
But yeah, you get a lot of different surprises. And do you want to look? We have a couple Easter eggs that
we actually have a new iOS app coming out, probably around the same time as this episode, maybe.
Okay.
And there's an Easter egg in there. Easter eggs are actually really interesting. Like Snapchat has a whole bunch of them, and I love Easter eggs because one, they're delightful. You're like, oh wow, this just makes me smile, and it is also something you want to show people.
Right.
It inspires word of mouth, and it's almost like it's like a secret. Hey, Eric, do you know about this Easter egg?
And for those who don't know, could you explain what a Snapchat does, for example, as an Easter egg?
Yeah, there are a couple of them. One of them is the color picker. If you click that color picker, you see all the colors that you can use. But if you slide your finger all the way down to the bottom of the screen, you can get the black color. If you slide all the way to the left, you get the white color.
Huh.
And what else? There's one other one that I'm forgetting. It's the black and white. This was before they had filters.
Okay.
You would type B and W, I think, and then it would actually change the screen to black and white.
Huh.
So that when I get a Snapchat from you that's black and white, I'm like, how did you do that?
Right.
And then I
Nice.
ask you, and it inspires that word of mouth.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So building it in and having variability every day. So often, we do a product launch and we get a great set of early adopters, but it can also be a challenge to go past that early adopter segment and grow your community. And a lot of times we need to have some sort of multiplying effect. You guys have obviously done a pretty good job so far of getting that multiplying effect, but what are you thinking about next?
Yeah. So we're really focused on the startup community and just really going deep within that existing community, so that if you are in this world, it's hard to escape it, whether it's through Twitter, word of mouth, or what people are showing or sharing with you. And so that's been our core focus. But from expansion, there's a lot of different, aspects to that. There's platform expansion, like iOS app is something that we're focusing on and have a big launch coming up. We just launched our Chrome extension as well. So how do we put Product Hunt in more places so that, again, it's inescapable, but it's also easier and more delightful to use as you're out and about or you're on your computer. And then, of course, longer term, there's how do you expand to other categories or expand kind of to other types of communities. And so we're looking right now at tangential communities and how to replicate what we've done here in technology and maybe games or others.
Cool.
Yeah, and so it's an exciting challenge to in some ways, obviously we have a head start, but to build communities from scratch and using the principles that we've applied here to something like gaming.
Nice. So as your community grows, it changes. And what have you guys noticed change in terms of early product hunters versus new product hunters?
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So in the beginning, everyone thinks, it's a different community. Everyone loves it because it's unique. It's almost like you find a band first that you really like, and then everyone starts to like the band. You're like, I don't know how I feel about it. But for some of those early people, especially the ones that contributed a lot and their thoughts are really valued, we do a lot of efforts to personally keep bringing them back. So we'll host a lot of brunches or dinners or events to keep integrating them into the community. So I think what you find over time is that there are people who they're trends. People love it, and then it kind of wears off a bit. But the people you want, you got to keep re-engaging them. And so it's in cycles. Yeah.
So it's nice that you mentioned that you have to keep re-engaging them, not like, oh, screw you, like if you don't like our product, then take a hike. So it's nice that you guys are putting an effort to get people to come back because you see the value in having those early evangelists.
Yeah, especially the ones that are really great things to say and a following, and Absolutely.
Yeah, and been supporters in the beginning. And meetups and brunches that we do here at the office, they're great. And those are some of my the most fun times of Product Hunt, but they're not very scalable. So I found Twitter personally and professionally the most scalable way to reach a lot of people and connect with a lot of people, because it's very lightweight, it's one to many, and that's how we also stay in touch with a lot of people and follow them and see what they're talking about and really build that relationship that way.
So as your community grows, it can often take on a mind of its own. What have you guys noticed about the Product Hunt community?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, so there have been almost sub-communities forming. There's Maker Hunt, which is the Slack community of how many people are now?
Over 500.
Wow.
Yeah, over 500 people. Eric Willis is the creator of this, and he's also one of our biggest supporters. He's awesome. And he created this community in Slack, and it's all people that have been on Product Hunt, makers that have built products in the Slack room. And so that's its kind of own community. Josh is doing Daily Hunt, which you mentioned, which is his podcast. He actually tweeted at me, he's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast, what should I name it? And I was like, we bounced ideas back and forth. I was like, in my mind, I was like, there's no way he's gonna do this beyond a week. And now it's on week 8, I think.
Yeah.
He's doing a podcast, I think Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so these kind of sub-communities are forming, and people are also building apps on top of Product Hunt, which is interesting. Mubs, it's his nickname. He's been doing some cool stuff. He built this embeddable widget. You can actually embed the product and the upvotes and everything on another site. And so it's kind of interesting to see what's happening and what we can learn from them. And actually, we should probably do a Q&A type of brainstorm meeting with them, figure out what should we be building.
Yeah, Mubs, for example, is about can have a book club within Product Hunt.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Mubs is building that page. So really just community starts to develop a mind of its own and engage with that, empower them to build great things. If they veer off, veer them back in a little bit, but how can we encourage them to further support the mission?
Awesome. All right, any final parting words for our viewers?
One thing I'll mention that I think is important as it relates to community building is, one, it started with friends of mine. And so I was, reaching out to these people that knew me, that would listen to me and try the product out more than some random person. And so you, in the beginning, have friends and friends of friends, and they're maybe enthusiastically using the product, which is great, but it's not necessarily validation that this is a community that will work, because they're listening to you, they're your friends. So be careful in looking at the data when you're with those type of people, and when you expand, that may change, engagement may drop. The other thing I'll mention is communities almost need to they need to move fast enough. They have to always feel like they're growing. And what we did early on when Nathan and I were working on a side project, we ended up he built this really basic MVP, and we kept it quiet for a week, but we kept them in the loop. We showed them some mock-ups of what we were working on, and then we did this press launch. It was super buggy, barely worked, but it was enough. And we did a press launch, and the whole purpose of that was to show momentum and show that this was a thing. And then we continually seeded the community and grew it that way. I've seen a lot of communities start, but then they're really cool in the beginning.
Right.
But then they fade because they don't either listen to the community or change or grow fast enough.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. One, that in the beginning, a lot of it's manual. A lot of it's you're building from scratch. A lot of it's relationships.
A lot of typing.
Slapping at the keyboard.
Email,
a lot of
tweeting,
waking up at 5:30 and going to sleep all day. And then while you're doing that, you're trying to operationalize it. You're trying to make systems around it. But you need to go at a pace where you can keep growing. And I will say that choose the channels that you are best at communicating with people and dominate those. For us, broadly Twitter, and Ryan owns that one, and also mini events, and I'll own that one. But if you dominate a channel, you start to get known for that. You start to really focus as opposed to spreading yourself through all these other channels. And and be a person, be nice, and talk to everybody. We're answering everybody all the time. If not us directly, someone from our team, we're all about it.
Just to recap, we talked about 4 main themes today. The first was how you want to create a positive first impression, and a lot of times that first impression is just reaching out to people and convincing them to use your product, and making sure that there's a combination of some folks who are influential and will give you feedback on your product. The second thing we talked about is pulling people back in and using channels like email and even some non-technical channels to pull folks back in. And then once you've created that community of users who are engaged, you want to think about how they can go out and evangelize. And Eric and Ryan gave us some great tips on how to pull them back in and have makers be able to spread the word about their products as well. And then finally, we talked about how communities change over time and to really give them the freedom to do so, right? You don't want your community to stagnate, you want to build momentum, and you want to make sure that you're listening to your community and changing with it. Finally, we have a challenge for you. I want to know how you've thought about building a first-time experience for your users, how you've thought about pulling them back into your product, how you've built a community, and how that community has changed over time. Submit your responses in the comments below, and the 3 best responses will get a special giveaway from Tracker and be featured in Femgineer's weekly newsletter. Thanks again to our special guests, Eric Tornberg and Ryan Hoover from Product Hunt, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And to all of you for tuning in. And finally, special thanks to our sponsor, Pivotal Tracker, for all their help and support in producing Femgineer TV. And if you've enjoyed this episode, then please share it with your friends, your teammates, and your boss. Tune in next time. We'll be hosting Indy Young, one of the founders of Adaptive Path, a design consultancy. Indy is currently a design consultant and has authored 2 books, Mental Models, as well as most recently, Practical Empathy. So subscribe to Femgineer's YouTube channel to hear when the episode is out. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'm really looking forward to reading your challenge responses. Registration for Femgineer's Confident Communicator course is now open through the end of this week. This course will only be taught once this year, so you won't want to miss out. To learn more about the course and register, visit femgineer.com/confident-communicator-course. Speak confidently and catapult your career. This pilot episode of Femgineer TV is brought to you by Pivotal Tracker. Build better software faster.
Yeah, I like rap.
You like rap?
Yeah, I like to rap.
You like to rap?
Yeah, I like Tupac.
You do you know
Tupac.
he raps?
Yeah.
And he was also the creator of Startup Digest.
Startup Edition.
Startup Edition.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I got it right this time. Then we talked about. I forgot. Okay, sorry. I keep wanting to say Ryan Hunt instead of Ryan.
Who was it? You know the emo friend? Somebody, I've been called that one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Just that's 8.
No, it's
so.
totally fine.
Alright. Is that good? Or is it good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.